We're joined by Dr. Luke Wood, who is the Vice President of Student Affairs and Campus Diversity at San Diego State University. So thank you for joining us, Luke.
Thank you for having me.
So as a professor and now in administration at San Diego State, who talks a lot about racial justice, how have things been for you guys during this past season?
Well, I think like most everyone else, our community has been going through it. Obviously, we've been in the midst of the COVID pandemic. So we had one pandemic that was health related, and then we immediately transitioned to that is remaining with a second pandemic, which has been the racial pandemic, with the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and so many others. And so our community, like most communities, has been embroiled in really kind of a deep gut check about, who we are, what we believe, and how we support all people, but particularly our Black community.
I'm thankful, that you're in the role that you are in to seek to care for and care for students, but also manage things that are going on campus and be a voice kind of in that space. What are some of the things that you guys have been working on in this season in terms of policy and initiatives?
In response to the kind of racial crises, we've been engaged in a number of different efforts. The first thing we did is we established listening circles where we had people who were part of the Black community, whether it was our students, faculty, staff, who came together to basically have sessions where we were listening to them, understanding like what are the challenges that they're facing, learning how we can best support them. And then we had similar circles for really our allies, for those who aren't necessarily from the Black community, but are supporters and advocates, for many of our minoritized communities. But that and releasing statements from our institution, those are important, but those aren't the real action. And I think that people appreciate the statements, they appreciate the opportunities for people to hear what they're experiencing. But right now, there's unrest. People want to see action. So we really been just engaged in what that would look like. So one of the first things we did is we pulled together faculty members in our Department of Africana Studies and then also in our Department of Criminal Justice, and they came together and we brought a resolution before our Senate that was passed, which basically makes it so now every student who goes into criminal justice has to take a class now on Black lives and policing as part of being able to graduate from our institution. So it's a graduation requirement that we established. And that was kind of the first thing that we did. And then we followed it up with what we were calling essentially our Juneteenth message. So we sent out a message on Juneteenth offering a 10-point plan of things that we would do that would basically help to build up our community. So one of the things that we said we're going to do is a cluster hire of faculty members with a demonstrated record of success in either teaching or research or service focused on our Black population. We set out to do an annual symposia focused on Black minds and Black lives. One of the bigger pieces, though, was, the curriculum itself tells people whether or not they belong. What's taught in the curriculum, if it doesn't address you and your community and your contributions to technology, to science, to mathematics, to any field, then you feel like you're decentered. And so basically a new effort that every dean now is establishing a task force for them to review their curriculum and offer new classes that embed anti-racism, anti-Blackness, and cultural competency into our curriculum.
I think it's great because so much of the current movement, is about raising awareness and hearing stories, but that's all, temporary unless we actually work towards a change. And so I'm thankful for how you guys have been doing that. And I know your kind of area of expertise has also been, especially the area of education and how biases affect, like you said, curriculum and the experience, especially of Black boys. And I know you mentioned your course, Black Minds Matter, which you're leading again this summer. Is that right?
Yeah. So this will be the third time that we've done it. And what the course really does is it focuses on the relationship between Black lives and Black minds. And so essentially we draw parallels between the policing of Black lives and the schooling of Black minds. And so when we think about that, if we look at the policing of Black lives, obviously the names of those who have fallen at the hands of law enforcement, oftentimes individuals who are unarmed, who've been targeted because of their skin color, mistreated, and at the hands of police brutality have lost their lives. And while that is real violence that takes place, unfortunately, in our society against the Black community, we also see that similarly there's more symbolic violence that takes place in education, where those same patterns of undervaluing people and criminalizing them play out even in early childhood, where you see a young child who's in kindergarten and the teacher assumes that they're a troublemaker or labels them as being the bad kid or being a misbehaving child or defiant, or where you see several students who are a young group of boys and they're throwing rocks and they're not supposed to be throwing rocks, but the one that's picked out amongst all of them to be disciplined is the one Black child. And so we see the same patterns. They play out through suspensions, through expulsions, through referrals. And so what we do with the class is we try to draw parallels between those, but with the ultimate understanding that what we need to go is that we need educators to convey love. And as Christians, I think that that's something that we've been told all our lives, right? To love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And so what we try to do in the class is to help teachers think through, what does it look like to convey love to a child that many of them have been taught to believe are not worth their time, that they're lesser than. And I think that there's a lot of people who want to do the right thing, they just don't know what it looks like. And so that's why we offer the class, to help make that more known.
That's really neat. I think it's great because what you're talking about, right? The idea of love is one of those changes that God calls us to bring into this world, both to demonstrate it and to make sure that everyone is experiencing His love. I'm thankful for what you're doing. I imagine it's also difficult, you being in the position that you're in, just the difficulty of making those types of changes. What are some ways that we could be praying for you and the work that you're doing?
Well, I mean, we can use prayer about just about everything. But I think that there's several things that really stand out. On my heart right now are our Black students at SDSU, UCSD, Point Loma, USD, and other institutions who are struggling right now in the midst of COVID, in the midst of racial pandemic, loss of jobs, the stress of the environment. So I would think just praying for them, for peace in this time, for being connected to people who love them, for support. I think the other thing that we could really use prayer on is for the class itself, the Black Minds Matter class. It's a free class. It's open to anyone. And we really want to see people take this opportunity to learn how they can best support and care and demonstrate that love to all of our children, but of course to our Black children as well. We believe that Black minds matter, and we think that there's a relationship there between Black lives and Black minds. If you don't value someone's life, then you're not going to value their mind. And we want to get to a point where we value both. And so praying that also that the hearts of those who are educators, teachers, counselors, administrators, that they would have the space in their hearts to be able to love a population that many of them have been taught not to. Those would be some things that we could definitely use prayer on.
Yeah, those are great. Thanks for that. I think what you're saying is so important for us to pray for, because as God does call us to love all people, we recognize that not everyone has been loved by others in this world in the same ways. And so thank you for sharing those things. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I look forward to all that God is going to do through your initiatives.
And thank you for your leadership in this time, and for all those who are part of the Ethnos community who've been just demonstrating the connection between justice, social justice, racial justice, and and the need to convey love to everyone in our society and in this time, to take that heart of Jesus and to distribute that to the most downtrodden communities that we engage. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely glad to be partnering together. All right. Thank you for joining us, Luke.
All right.